It's a pretty common thing that people walk by our rig and they talk about the truck, then they talk about the RV, and then they see our car parked back behind and they ask if we tow that car behind the RV. To which the answer is no. And then of course they ask, how's that work out for us? So because we get asked that question quite a bit, I thought I'd do a real quick video and explain our thoughts on that. Follow along. Now there's one main reason that Diane and I decided to travel with a second car while we're traveling in a fifth wheel. Now we'll touch more on that later on in the video, but right now I thought I would share with you some information that I gathered that I thought might be interesting. Now also keep in mind that having a second car works for us. It may not work for you, it may not work for anybody else, but it works for us, and we've been asked the questions what it's like to travel with a second car, and that's why we're putting together this video, because obviously there are other people out there thinking about it as well. Also keep in mind that the numbers I share with you here, everything changes. You don't travel the same amount of miles every year. You don't travel in the same parts of the country every year. Fuel prices are different in each part of the country. The terrain is different. You may travel in more mountains. So everything changes every year. So keep that in mind also as we go through these numbers. But what I want to share with you off the get-go are the numbers we spent on fuel from the time we took off full timing in 2012. Well, actually, I'm going to start this in 2013 because we left in November of 2012. So that's too short of a time in 2012. And I'm going to share with you the numbers we spent for when we first took off. We had a motorhome and a towed. So we'll share with the combined fuel. Then when we switched to the fifth wheel and the Ram 5500, we'll share the combined totals on fuel there too. So listen up and see if you hear some kind of a trend going on. In 2013, now keep in mind, we traveled with a motorhome and we had a Jeep as a towed. We spent $5,010. In 2014, with a motorhome and towed, $5,396. 2015, $4,730. And in 2016, we spent $3,544. And that year we switched from the Jeep to an F-150. And in 2017, we spent $4,710, and that was just the motorhome and the F-150. 2018, we spent $4,835. Now, 2019 was a transition year. We went from the motorhome to the fifth wheel, so that's kind of a funky year. But 2019, we spent $4,635, and that, again, that's kind of a funky year. 2020 is when we switched over the full year with a fifth wheel and the Ram and the CRV. And we spent $1,461. In 2021, we spent $3,736. Now again, that's the Ram, the fifth wheel, and the second car, the CRV. 2022, we spent $6,622. Now keep in mind, that was an exceptional year for us. We left Arizona. We go way up to Maine, worked our way out to Florida, back to Arizona. That was a lot of miles, and the fuel had jumped up pretty high at that time, if you remember back. But anyway, regardless, we spent $6,622. In 2023, we spent $3,491. So if you listen to those numbers and go back and listen to them again, you'll see that we actually spent more money with the motorhome and a towed than we spent with the Ram and the CRV. So if you look at it just fuel-wise, it kind of made sense and worked for us. Now, I know a lot of you right now are going, yeah, but what about the upkeep on the car? You have to take in the insurance and the upkeep and tires. Okay, let's talk about that. The car insurance, we pay $780 per year. So if you break that up into 12 months and add that to these last few years, it's still less money than we spent on fuel alone on the motorhome and a towed. So there's that. Now keep in mind the upkeep. All right. Well, look at the miles we put on the CRV and look at the miles we saved not putting on our truck. Look at the tires on the CRV, what a tire cost on a CRV compared to what a tire cost on that truck. A huge, huge difference. And doing oil changes, a lot less money on the CRV than they are on the truck. So overall, that saved us money as well. And here's a couple other things. I wrote down some notes because I wouldn't remember these things. So keep in mind that if we had to replace that CRV, a brand new CRV 2025 is roughly $38,000. That's ready to go. Out the door, get in it, take off, and drive, right? Just like that car is right now. $38,000. If you went and replaced that truck, a Ram 5500 cabin chassis alone, with the same trim level, $90,000 for just the cabin chassis. Now, if we did the same, we paid like $71,000 for the truck back in 2018. If you take that same increased percentage and add it to what we paid for our upfitting of the truck, which is the bed, the hitch, the auxiliary fuel tank, the Kelderman air ride, the headache rack, everything we did to that truck and add it all up, that would make this truck, well, that would run you roughly $40,000 now to do the upfitting to the truck we have. Now you're talking roughly, and maybe a little bit more, $130,000 to $135,000 to replace that truck today. I can tell you right now, we are not going to spend another $135,000 on a truck. So if you look at it that way, the money we saved on fuel and the miles we saved on the truck to help that truck's value stay higher when it comes time for us to sell that truck, I think it worked out really well for us. What else did I write down here? I think that really kind of covers it. Now, I also mentioned that there's a main reason that we did this to begin with. And that main reason was Diane. Back in the day, Diane used to drive my F-350 King Ranch Dually around all the time. She loved driving that truck. We had the conversation about having this truck with us as we travel. Before we got it, she was fine with it until she wasn't. Then all of a sudden I realized that she didn't want to drive herself places. She didn't want to drive that truck anymore. Well, didn't bother her so much in the small towns, but some of the towns that were larger, and you had to go to the store and tight parking spaces and tight city streets. She wasn't comfortable. She wasn't wanting to drive herself. Her freedom had disappeared. So for us to get the CRV gave her back her freedom. And that was the main reason we went with the truck. Regardless if it saved us any money or saved us wear and tear on the truck, none of that made any difference whatsoever. It was getting Diane back her freedom to roam around as she wanted to and not rely on me to drive her around. I'm sure everybody out there can understand that. But you know what? After we got that CRV and started keeping track of numbers, all these things came forward and we realized that, man, that was actually a pretty good move on our part. Now, I will say, there are some downsides to it too, right? We don't travel in the same rig on travel days, but that's okay because our travel days typically aren't that long, and Diane loves sitting back there listening to Bruce Springsteen. I'm not a Bruce Springsteen fan. It gives her a chance to sit back there and listen to her music. We carry a couple walkie-talkies with us, and we communicate back and forth, so we're always in communication. We have no problem with that whatsoever. So that's one downside. There has been a few times that we've gone to campgrounds and they've charged an extra vehicle fee. Now I think since we've switched over to having a car with us as well, we might have paid an extra vehicle fee 3 to 4 times, and it's usually $5 to $7 for the extra vehicle per night, and 2 of those times in the same campground. Now that kind of bugs me because if you can fit all your vehicles in the campsite that you reserve, I don't think you should have to pay an extra fee. If you have to park your car somewhere else in overflow parking or something like that, maybe I see the extra fee. But regardless, that is a downside if you have to pay that extra fee once in a while, but it's not very often. Those are really about the only downsides. For me, probably the biggest downside is not having Diane next to me in the truck so I can yak with her back and forth throughout the day on travel days. But again, we both enjoy our quiet time. Diane gets to listen to her music. So I hope that answers some of the questions that we get as far as why do we travel with a second car and how that works for us. And one of the big questions we always get is, oh, that has to be a lot more money. Well, in reality, it is costing us nothing more really, and probably in the long run saving us money. And even though I say Diane wanted her freedom by driving that CRV around, I tell you what, when we get to those small towns, let's just say Bangor, Maine, for example, or wherever it may be, I love driving that CRV around at 30 plus miles per gallon or 35 miles per gallon, parking it in tight spots, not worrying about parking that truck in a tight spot and maybe trying to find a spot way out in the North 40 all the time. That car is kind of nice to drive around. Anyway, that's our thoughts on having a second car. Again, it may not be for you, it's not for everybody, but for us it really works pretty well, and we are very happy that we made that choice. All right, hey, if you have any more questions, feel free to leave them down below in the comment section. I'll try to answer anything you might have a question on. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, got anything out of it at all, if you enjoy our channel, please consider giving us a thumbs up. Possibly leave us a comment down below. Those things really help the algorithms with YouTube and helps our channel out a lot. And as always, have a great day, and we'll see you in the next video.